Okay, great. Let me share first. Let's share the screen. Let's see. Let's confirm that you can see the screen. Yes, good, great. And so I'm gonna give you some time so you can warm up with my accent. At the moment, I'm in Thailand. It's 4 in the morning, but I was very excited to help you guys. I've never done any presentation for Washington, D.C. Even I've been almost everywhere in the rest of America. I've been in Canada. I've been everywhere. And then I thought it would be a great idea. So today I'm going to be talking about my experience of working all around the world with different companies. Obviously, it's just my perspective. And then my plan today is that I give you some new frameworks I developed, and most of them are in the book. Then you can expand it. And if it helps you, I'm going to be more than happy, right? So the idea today is that apart from showing you these frameworks, I wanted to talk about what happened in the brain during agile change and how we can do to improve or to make sure that people embrace change. And sometimes what we see in companies is that for some reason, strange reason, people do not want to change, right? And I've been working for a long time. I've been including certain ideas of neuroscience of change into Agile. I've been trying to see what happens in the brain, and I will tell you a little bit more. And then this presentation, the first part, we're talking about just briefly about the current situation. And then we're going to talk about these very powerful frameworks that I develop in different companies. The cool thing is that I've been working in many countries, and I've been testing all these things, and no matter the culture, they are going to work everywhere, right? So if you are interested about knowing more, this is something I do just for free, which I call the organizational pill, which is 5 minutes each episode, and I talk about something like, for example, accelerated change, or certain frameworks, or how to coach the product owner to the art of saying no. And all this started a few months ago, and many of my colleagues were fired or the companies closed, and then they try to spend this time doing something, and I started helping them by developing these short videos about different topics, right? And also, this is an organizational appeal, and that's the URL is in YouTube. So let me start with the basics. I think my camera is, again, I will switch off the camera. You're not missing. Believe me, you're not missing anything from looking at me at this point. So let me start with the basics and try for you to understand how change is working, and basically try to understand what the exponential pace of change is. So basically, we always had unexpected event, right? And this is something that have been happening. In fact, many people are quite surprised with COVID, but we have a pandemic every approximately 15 years. And we had more severe pandemics, the Spanish flu, for example, that killed 50 million people. and other ones that had more severe. But then additionally, that this is something that everyone knows. I'm not going to repeat that. Probably many people talk about. We have companies using short work cycles that basically accelerate the market disruptions. So before, maybe we produce a piece of software every month or 6 months. I remember when I published my first book in 2001, which was about Visual Basic.net. Was the first book in Spanish for Microsoft. And then at that time, Microsoft released a piece of software an update every 6 or 8 months. And now you're able to produce every minute or, every day, every week, whatever you want. So this is accelerating the market disruptions. Then we have that people are interconnected, and that means that everyone around the world can connect with someone else, and then we create what we call shared knowledge, and this accelerates. Obviously, we have artificial intelligence that I have seen so many cool things in the last few weeks, and it's accelerating more and more. And then we have big data. What it produces is that increases the ratio of market disruptions. The problem is that human beings are not prepared for accelerated change. Our brains are not really prepared for that. But there are some tricks we can use for people to feel a little bit more comfortable with this accelerated speed, and then they can embrace change. So today I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about certain frameworks, and I'm going to talk about the current situation. And also I'm going to tell you some techniques that maybe you have been using, and then with COVID and all the current situation, maybe do not work very well. And I'm going to talk also about enterprise agility. And one of the problems we have in companies when we try to talk about enterprise agility is that basically we have companies, maybe, it happened to you, where it's not just about teams. We started with IT, with teams, try to help them. In fact, around 2003 to 2007, I was a Scrum Master for a company like 15 or 17 years ago. And at that point, we focused on teams. But then what happened after is that we started seeing that just by helping a team, we do not increase, we could increase a little bit, but not that much, the business value delivered. And this is because at the time of trying to increase business value, we need to take a look at all the value chain. So when we produce software, it's not just about the software, but it's how we gather their different requirements, how we interact with other departments, and how you produce it, etc. So we have a lot of people involved. And then it means that we have different mindsets. And we also have, apart from mindset, different structures in the company. Sometimes in a team, there are people in the team that do not belong to the company. And that basically makes quite difficult for change consultant to expand ideas from the IT area. For example, something very simple as short work cycles. When we want to take that idea outside IT teams, then sometimes it doesn't work very well, because for many reasons. I remember I was working with for a company, trying to help a company in New Zealand. It was a bank. It was around 6 years ago. And then first day I went there, this company told me, Erich, we are very good with Agile, but just in the IT teams. And now we want to expand these ideas to the rest of the organization. So what happened here? When we want to expand Agile to the rest of the organization, there are certain practices that we can expand. There are other practices that we need to change in order to expand to the rest of the company. And there are other practices that do not work, right? This is basically what happens. But also certain frameworks have certain problems. And I want to talk about all these things. So if you don't get bored, let's move on and then let's see. So let's analyze the current situation with COVID. I know what's happening, but I wanted to give you a different perspective about the brain and how things are working at the moment. So the first thing is that in the past, we have a lot of market disruptions, but all these market disruptions were more related to other companies trying to create a product. For example, we were just about releasing a product and another company released a similar product. But what we had that now is that the disruption is not just about in the company, but in our private life, right? Before we went to the company, maybe the company was a chaos because something happened. Then we came back home and hopefully life continued in a normal way, but that changed, right? So COVID changed the uh, routine, then increased stress in people, and then it's having a certain impact on mental health at the moment. And we're going to see why certain practices we have been using, especially with the Scrum, do not work very well. And also, we have to have in mind that human beings are sociable. Everyone like to go talk to someone. Even go outside. When you are not outside for a few days, you start feeling strange. Also, we have what we call ataraxia. Ataraxia is a different state of mind, which means a state of mental tranquility. What happens is, for people working from home, the kind of stress they have is different. So it's not the same to be 1 hour in traffic trying to go to the office that being at home or working from home. The types of stress are completely different. So what happened here is that when we work for a long time from home, or a few weeks or a few months, our brain start working in a different way. And then it means that we have different kind of stress. And first, we have to be careful when we bring all these people back to the office because it produces a lot of stress. But also, there are other things, like, for example, the kind of stress is different. We have a new piece of research which shows that when people do video conferences, the kind of stress that it produces to the brain is really high. So that's why you feel very tired. But I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes. Then we have, possible changes at the workplace that can make you feel a little bit um, hesitate about what's happening next in the company, the fear of unknown, when, it can bring some conscious or unconscious mental thoughts. And then we have other emotional aspects that, for example, today they tell you that the vaccination is ready, and tomorrow tell you that it was a fail, and then it's emotional changes swift from one side to another, and produce a lot of distress, and also family troubles, right? Watching TV and then seeing all the people all the time, and that produces a lot of different issues. But there are also positive things. For some people are at home looking after the kids, etc. Right? So let me start with some recommendations. Most of the companies I'm working at the moment, or they have all the people working from home, working remotely, or part of the teams are working remotely and another ones are working in the office, right? The main issue these teams have is that they use just Zoom. Zoom is a terrible tool, or Skype are terrible tools for teams. The reason why it happens is because when you have Zoom or you have Skype, you just see the face of the other person, right? But when we try to produce value for a company, our brain receives information for different channels. So the first thing we need to do is what we call to rebuild this environment in a hybrid way. So we're going to have people working from home, and we're going to have people maybe working in the office, maybe, right? And then we need to rebuild this social environment. And I'm going to tell you what it means and why we have to do that. And this has a massive impact in how you produce value and the amount of value the value change produces, right? So when we are physically in the company, for example, you can see all the public information radiators. Imagine you are walking in the physical office, you see all the panels and you see all the boards and Kanban boards, hopefully are physical boards. And then you see also all the visible social interactions. Imagine that one of the guys from your team is talking to a person who specializes on something, and then that one day you need to know about that something. That imagine one person from the team is talking to a database developer, right? And you need to talk about a database. then you probably are going to talk about the person from your team first, because you have seen this person talking to someone else. This is because your brain records all these social interactions and makes certain conclusions and predictions, right? Then your brain, when it's in the physical, in a physical place, it recognize visible facial expressions and try to make some conclusion. It's like a supercomputer trying to look at the environment. And then the visual interactions and prediction and recognition. I talk about this in my book. I don't want you to be to get bored. So then the first thing we have to do is try to reveal the social environment. There are many tools around. One of the tools I generally recommend is Sococo. I don't know if you know, guys, Sococo. Have you used it before? Yes, no? Give me a thumb or tell me something if you have used it. So basically, Sococo, as any other tool, allows you to rebuild the social environment, right? So you can rebuild the offices, you can put the same furniture, you can have you have an avatar, and then you move from different offices. You click in an office, you can close the door, open the door. So you start seeing how people visually move in the office. Imagine you open Sococo in the morning and you see that everyone is inside a building, an office. What are you gonna do? You're gonna run to that office, right? So when I was working in a company, in an airline in Chile, what we did at that time is we took a floor from a building and we put cameras everywhere. And then we connect these cameras with the different rooms. We try to break first this gap between the virtual and the physical. So then we didn't care. It was not important if the person was virtual or physically in the room. As long as they click in the room, or as long as they went physically into the room, you could see that person, and everyone could see the different boards, and everyone could write in these boards and interact, right? And there were microphones everywhere. So the first thing we want to do in a situation like the one we had today is try to reveal the social environment. This is something I talked in the first edition of my book, which was like 3 years ago. And the reason why we need that is because we have seen that when we do not reveal the social environment, the amount of business value that the company produces is lower, could be less than half, right? And this is something very important to have in mind. The reason why we say that is because the way that information flows in a social environment is different than when we talk one-to-one in the camera. So that's why we need to use tools to try to reveal the social environment, right? And I have done many experiments with that. And then there is a strong connection between the value stream and the physical space. If you don't believe me, just, for example, take a product owner and put the product owner in the 5th floor, and then put the development teams in the 1st floor. Something that Scrum Inc. did a long time ago was to measure teams, Scrum teams, and they found out that if teams are further away by 30 meters, I'm going to need some help to convert that into feet. Then what happens is decreases business value around 50%, right? So that's why it's very important at this time to start first reveal the physical environment as number one priority in the company, unless we want to produce less innovation and business value. Then once we do that, my suggestion is that we improve the communities of practice. Everyone knows that communities of practice basically is a place to share knowledge, but I'm going to ask you to take a further step. As information does not flow very well when you have half of the team remotely, and even if you reveal the social environment and the other part of the team in the office, then you need to make sure that everyone gets knowledge, fresh knowledge all the time. So the communities of practice should be reinforced. And one of the things I did some years ago, and it worked very well, was that people were allowed to vote. We did it very democratic, the communities of practice. Imagine that architects wanted a new platform or to migrate to a new platform. something very, very easy. Then it required a new technology. So what we did is we say, okay, architects can choose anything they want, as long as during the community of practice, all the people, or half of the people plus one, vote that they want that. And then we say that everyone could go to the community of practice. So for example, imagine that one day architects decided to change a framework to a different version or a different framework. So then developers could also go to those meetings and vote if they wanted to move or not. What happened automatically when people started voting is that architects spend a lot of time explaining to developers why they wanted to go into this direction, right? And it was a very interesting effect. So communities of practice should not be just a place to distribute knowledge, but also for people to vote about the decisions of technology. And we make them open, the communities of practice, so everyone were able to go there and vote. Okay. And the last thing in here I wanted to talk is that what we call daily skill balancing. So now, as information, you have a lot of people remote and information is probably going slower into the company, then what we need to make sure is we need to find a way to give teams more authority to decide if they need some additional skill. For example, imagine that one of the teams need a UX, but they don't have a UX, but the team sitting nearby has a UX. So we need to give the freedom to that team to talk to the other team and make some arrangement. They agree with the other team that, for example, this person is going to come to the team, I don't know, 2 days a week or whatever. And you have to give the freedom to team to self-organize about getting additional skills and put clear, very clear working agreement, right? I wanted to stop here, Fadi, for a moment to see if you have any questions about what we have seen. And then I'm happy to answer the questions, and then we continue with something different. So I'll give you 1 minute to see, guys, if you had any question, anything you wanted to know about any of these experiences. So Fadi, if you see any question, otherwise we continue, you tell me.
Yeah,
right?
I'm monitoring the chat. I think we're good,
Yeah.
Eric.
Okay, let's go ahead and then we come back in case, right? So the second thing I recommend is to establish what I call a rapid response room. Rapid response room, it can be virtual or physical or a mix of the two, which is the best idea. It does not look like the picture on the right-hand side. I just put that picture for you guys to remember what a rapid response room is. It's like a kind of, some people call it war room. But basically, the idea here is to accelerate information flow. As the markets are changing, maybe from one day to another, imagine you are using a Scrum framework, right? With a Scrum framework, basically, many companies have 1 or 2 weeks sprint. And then what happens every 2 weeks, they, let's say, recalculate or go in a different direction. But sometimes 2 weeks could be a lot of time. So what we are doing here is we're creating a room in the company that could be a mix, as I said, between virtual and physical room, where this is an empty room. I suggest not putting any chairs or anything, and then we use the walls like information room. We put all the walls with all the information we need real time. But the difference here that is everyone can go into that room, and then if anyone see that there has been a change in a market that is impacting them, then this person has to have the responsibility to call to that room people, the rest of the people impacted. Let's imagine that you are just about releasing on Monday, it's Friday or it's Thursday, and you are releasing on Monday a product, and you discover that some of the company released a better product. Does it make sense for you to release that product? Does it make make sense for you release in a different day. So what's going to happen is this person went inside this room and discovered that some other company released a product. So she or he is going to call all the people related to that room, and then they are gonna, from different profiles, it doesn't have to be the person going there, can be anyone, not just the boss or managers, anyone can go there. So he's gonna maybe call people from marketing to say, oh, listen, we need to accelerate this, people from finance, maybe IT, maybe whoever want to join, and then they're gonna make some decisions, including product owners. And one of the decisions can be to cancel the sprint and to go ahead. But then what's happening during that time is that they are also reevaluating the backlogs, the commitments, and then maybe they need to cancel or not some sprint. Maybe they need to add some urgent user storage. Maybe they need to resize or to change priorities, and then they're going to make a decision. Then when they exit this room, everything goes in a different direction, right? And this is very important. So the new hypotheses have to be tested now, and then this is a way to accelerate feedback, what we call accelerated feedback, right? And that's going to change the objective, okay, change anything. So what I'm saying here is that Scrum or whatever framework you are using to produce a product is gonna be, or it could, whatever you do can change based on what happened in that room, right? So, and then you're going to try, for example, decide that you wanted to try different alternatives, or you want to do something else, but anything can change. And then, you know, every company is different, so you can refine and improve this idea I'm giving you. So do you have any question, guys, about this rapid response room? So the rapid response room is basically the center of the universe for the company in these months of rapid disruptions. And this is something that you have to make sure it has some working agreement. Everyone can go there. I recommend not having any chairs. So it's not a room for meetings. And then everyone can go in and out that room. And the idea is that accelerate information flow to make decisions and to create faster market disruptions, right? Any questions, guys? No? Okay, let's go ahead. So the other thing I wanted to tell you is at this point in time, you have to be very, very creative. Some years ago, I was working with a company in New Zealand. And one day the CEO of this company called me and said, Eric, I wanted to fire 3% of a certain area of the company because I wanted to take that money into the SAP department. I need that money into the SAP department. I don't have the money. So the only option is to fire people. And to be honest, I knew a lot of the employees and I knew their kids, you know, and I said, if that happens, first of all, for me, it was a responsibility. Because when you fire someone, you don't fire just that person. You fire that person, you fire their kids, you fire the whole family. And as a coach at this time, I think it's a huge responsibility. So I told the CEO, give me the weekend. I will see what I can do to save those people, right? So I came on Monday morning and I did something very simple. I went to the SAP department and I found out how much money they were paying to that department. And I found out how much multitasking people were doing between non-related tasks. And I'm going to show you what I discovered. So what I discovered is that most people were basically in the SAP department, which was the department that they were spending almost $1 million a month. That's maybe for America is nothing, but for a company in New Zealand, it's a country with 3.5 million or 4 million is a lot of money. They were spending almost $1 million New Zealand dollars a month in that department. What I found is people switch between tasks 3 to 4 times. And we have a lot of research. We have done a lot of research. Also, Microsoft did, other companies did, and we can calculate how much you lose by switching between non-related tasks. So what I found is that approximately as a result of this switching between non-related tasks, for every dollar they invested in the SAP department, they were losing 58 cents as a result of the switching between tasks. As coaches, you know that you can relatively easy solve that by making sure they have proper backlogs. Then they have a proper product owner. Then nobody can come and say, okay, stop whatever you are doing and start working on this until you don't finish it. So as a result of that, by adding backlog, by doing a few little changes, we were able to get more money into SAP without having to fire the employees, which made me very, very happy. And this is the kind of thing you have to start trying. You have to be very creative at this point. Do not just think of frameworks. Try to have an open mind. We have a lot of information, and try to see if there are other ways of solving the problems. Right, guys? Do you have any question about? If you want to know more at the end of the presentation today, I give you my blog, and then you can see there the techniques I use to make this calculation based on different pieces of research, and you can find more, and was relatively easy to do, and I think you can do in many places, right? So this first part was just to give you an idea of what you can do, but in the second part I wanted to talk about business agility or enterprise agility, which is the same. And then I have a very specific definition of my book of what business agility is. That for me is the capacity for the company to constantly adapt to new market conditions to create a competitive advantage. But the key part here is the part I put in orange, which is without negatively impacting on its organizational health. And this is key because you can do the first two lines, but it's not going to be sustainable if you don't have high organizational health. And we're going to see the connection between this and what's happening now in the market and how to solve this, right? And I do that so we can all be on the same page before started talking to other things. Then organizational health, from my perspective, is psychological safety plus creation of sustainable business value in perpetuity. Right, that's my definition. Maybe your definition can be different, or the coach can be different, but this is something I've been using and it works well, and it's part also of my book. And finally, resilience, which is the ability to recover from an adverse situation. But the ability to recover, it doesn't mean that you recover and you're still bad. I mean, imagine, I don't know, you were married for 10 years. If you have resilience and then you get divorced, then probably a few years after, you're going to be fine. It doesn't mean that you're going to be, you recover, but you're going to be sad and bad for the rest of your life. A company, when they recover, it means that they recover. It doesn't mean they almost recover. It doesn't mean that they recover, but all the employees do not trust the CEO, do not trust other teams. They fully recover. Right. So this is first what I wanted to tell you in order to, everyone be on the same page. Do you have any question about this, guys? Or anything you wanted to mention or any question? And these ones are clear description, because what I found for many years is that everyone was on different pages about enterprise agility. And I wanted just to, when I published the first edition of my book 3 years ago, I wanted just to give a clear definition so it's easy for companies to understand what it is, right? And it's a little bit more comprehensive than just the concept we have of agile. So let's start with very basic things. Imagine that you need to go to a company and you want to expand agile or certain agile concept to the rest of the organization. How do you know if you have the right skills or not to do that? Well, some time ago, I came up with an idea. I don't know, maybe you could find it worth or not, of trying to take a look at 4 different groups of 4 different things that need to happen for you to be successful when you are trying to do this, right? The first thing is what you already know, that some people do not call mechanical skills. Some people call it hard skills, right? But I will tell you soon why I call it mechanical skills. But mechanical skills is everything you can learn, right? A practice you can learn, or anything you can learn that it does not really involve a lot of your emotional part, right? Anything you can learn and you can teach, and then it just involves learning that, repeating that, and mechanical skills. Then the second part is what I call emotional skills. Some people call it soft skills, but for example, negotiation is a soft skill, but negotiation do not really require that you involve your feelings, right? Your emotional part. So for me, it's more a mechanical skill. So that's why I call it mechanical and emotional skills, right? And I will give you soon examples of emotional skills. But everything which involves emotion, for example, holding from your feelings during a conversation and trying to give the right answer, everything which is generally really hard for people to manage their emotions, everything would require for you to, with this technique, to manage your emotions very well, to self-control your emotions, is here, right? Then is what we call mental agility, and this is from a bigger framework I'm going to talk about. My theory is that if people in a company do not have mental agility or certain degree of mental agility, even if you teach them Scrum or the framework you want, then this company is not going to create much innovation, right? If you say in that way, maybe you say, oh, yes, it makes sense, right? And then we have a specific techniques as an agile consultant that we use to increase mental agility. Mental agility in science, or what we call a neuroscience of change, we see mental agility as, imagine your neurons connect always in the same way, but in order to see problem from different perspective, your neurons needs in the brain to connect in a different way, and it's what we generally, or scientific people call neuroplasticity. And we have certain techniques. I work with CEOs around the world with certain techniques like reframing, where we scientifically proven increase this neuroplasticity. And then if you want to be very successful, you need to make sure that health in the organization is good. Organizational health, you remember we talked a few seconds ago, is let me go to the previous, is good. If the health in the organization is good, you have more chances to be successful, right? Do you have any question about these four things? So what I do is when I work with coaches around the world, then we make a list of all these skills. So one session, we put all these four things, we form different groups, and everyone writes different techniques. With mechanical and emotional skills, people do not have much problems. They don't have many problems with this. But when we are talking about mental agility or organizational health, it's a little bit more complex because as a coaches, this is relatively new, not that new, but relatively new. Okay. So should I carry on? Any questions so far, Fadi, about this? No?
We had a question about something you covered earlier. We'll come back to it at the end of the talk.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So this is something I came up long time ago. I was working for a very big bank in New Zealand, and then let's go please. And then a few days after I arrived, people told me we are doing very well with Agile in the IT teams, but we want to expand it to the rest of the organization. And then what you can find generally when they say that, you have people with completely different mindset. People on sales give us a problem to solve to an IT person, and they give the same problem to a people in sales, and the same problem to a people in the marketing department, and they're going to find different solutions because they have different mindsets. They see the world from different perspectives. So then I say, how the hell am I going to do that? Everyone had different perspective. And then they asked me, to create value streams, so teams of people working together with completely different mindsets. So what I did is I created with this very nice cake. It's a chocolate cake, right? A very low calorie chocolate cake, no sugar, just in case, guys. It's not going to be heavy. And then the foundation of the cake is what we call mental agility, right? And you're going to see now that for me, enterprise agility is based on 5 different types of agility. So mental agility is the ability for people to reframe problems, right? For example, if you have a problem, you are able to see the problem from different perspectives. But there is something very tricky here, and it is that it is not just about seeing the problem from different perspectives, but to embrace the values from that person. For example, let me give you an example. Try to think of a politician that you love. I'm going to give you like 10 seconds. Think of that politician that you really like. I mean, some people don't like politicians. Guys, think of a football player if you don't like to choose a politician, right? Okay, now think of some values you like about that person. 2 or 3 values, something you really like about that person. Now I'm going to ask you to think of a person you cannot see, that you hate that person, you can't stand that politician or football player. And think of the values, right? Completely different values than yours. Now, do me a favor. Imagine that for a few minutes, you are that politician, not the good one, but the other one, or the other person with different values. You have to be that person. Imagine you have to be that person. Imagine for a second you are that person and start repeating yourself. The values from that person are your values. For example, if the other person hates ice creams and I love ice creams, I'm gonna say I hate ice creams, right? If the other person hates the people from certain place or whatever, you now hate it. What you're gonna see is you don't feel very comfortable, right? About embracing value from someone who is against your values. And this is basically because there is activation of one area of the brain called amygdala. I will talk about in a few minutes. But then every time you do required to embrace mental agility, you also need to embrace the values of that person. And it's very difficult in the very beginning, right? This is why sometimes some companies fail, because they just imagine that they are in the shoes of this client, but they do not embrace their values because they are against sometimes the company, right? So in order to increase mental agility, you need to use what we call reframing techniques. You can check on the internet, you can read my books where I explain how it works. But this is very important to increase neuroplasticity. My theory is that if employees do not have mental agility, you're not going to be that far away, right? The second level of enterprise agility, what I call social agility, is how people connect physically or virtually, right? If people, the idea of creating any product is to create this shared knowledge, this collective knowledge. If people do not connect very well, then it's not going to work well, and then information flows slower, and then you do not create much innovation. How people connect is crucial, right? It's like having a partner and not connecting well. Doesn't exist really. The third level is what we call outcomes agility, is for the company to be able to change the strategy or the budget in a way that they do it quickly, but also employees feel they feel comfortable about changing strategy. Imagine if everyone is mentally agile, everyone connects very well, but the company takes a year to change, for example, strategy. Do you think it's going to work? Well, I have serious doubt that's going to work, right? And then we need to make sure that if we change the strategy, people feel comfortable with that, right? Then we have structural agility. This is easy to understand, if all the processes in the company, and we need to make sure that we collectively create processes in the company. For example, if we affect an area, we need to change processes in that area. People in that area should be included into the creation of these processes. That's the best thing. Or the role, you create a new role, people that are going to be affected, you need to include that. And finally, we have technical agility, and this is what you guys call generally as agile. Agility. When some people talk about agility, you should think of technical agility. So what happened here, guys, is that every time you need to change something in the organization, you take this cake with you, and then we create what we call a powerful change plan. A powerful change plan is a plan that have in mind all these 5 different areas. For example, if I want to create a tool, imagine something very easy. I want to change a tool in a department, right? Then I change that tool. Look what happened to me. We changed a tool in a department, but then we needed to have a person 24/7 that could come to the company in case this tool crashed, right? So we needed to have the proper structures for this person to come at any time. We also need this person have to have an insurance also in case, you know what happened to us. One person was coming at 4 in the morning and crashed the car. Nothing happened really, but the company is going to cover that. Then we need to make sure that this person connect, if you change the tool, the people connect very well with other departments affected, right? And these people have to have mental agility to see if, or to see the problem from different perspectives, to adjust this tool and make sure that serves the purpose. So every time you change, you create a change, make sure you do a list, a checklist, and you make sure that every small change, you need to cut this cake like vertically, right? And you need to at least touch a little bit of this one. And if you do this, we have something, we increase resilience, and our products, our changes, are gonna change even better, faster, and people are gonna embrace it. And this is my definition for enterprise agility. That enterprise agility, apart from the definition I gave you before, they need powerful plans that it requires that you consider these 5 different types of agility. Does it make sense for you guys? So generally, when we make a change, companies forget about the other types of agility, and then they focus on the technical agility, or they focus just on the structural agility, right? They change a process and nothing else, right? And this is very important. So my advice is, when some companies have organizational improvement backlogs, as agile consultants, you've probably seen them where the company write them. So these items in the backlog should also have in mind 2 things. First, that each change at least have in mind all these 5 different areas, but every item should improve organizational health. Okay, so if, for example, imagine that you have an item in this backlog which says that a team should work in a certain way. But if that certain way is going to make people feel very tired and work extra hours, then this item, we should reframe this new element from the improvement backlog in a way that improves in organizational health. So we are constantly checking now with COVID that the thing we do try to improve organizational health. And especially as things are changing very quickly, we make sure that things are improving all the time, the organizational health, because as market disruption accelerates, it generates chaos and conflict in the company. And then if we don't have good organizational health, business value start deteriorating, right? Does it make sense? Yes. Okay, so quickly, I show you how the brain works, right? Imagine that you are learning how to drive a car. When you start learning how to drive a car, it happened to me a long time ago. In fact, I had to do the test for driving 3 times. I failed 3 times, right? No, I failed twice, and then the 3rd one I passed it. A long time ago. So when you start learning it, we have at the front of the brain, you have what we call the prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex is the kind of intelligent area of the brain that when you learn something is very clever and try to learn this new activity. The problem of the prefrontal cortex is that it consumes a lot of oxygen. That's why when you start a new job, for example, with new duties to do, you feel very tired because the prefrontal cortex start trying to, it's a kind of perspective and analytical reasoning, very, very intelligent, start trying to learn this. So it consumes a lot of oxygen. Then when you learn it, it moves this to the basal ganglia, which is like the hard drive. The good thing about the basal ganglia is that it does not consumes much oxygen. So it's automate. It's like an automation, right? Automate the process. And then you are driving, you are talking to your wife or husband or girlfriend, you are looking outside, you are checking the weather on the phone or on your iPad, and everything at the same time. This is because the basal ganglia automated. And when you automate this, the basal ganglia does not consume much oxygen. But what I wanted to focus here is the amygdala. The amygdala basically is what we call the small detector of the body. And basically it activates when something severe happens, right? And then when it activates, it floods your brain with certain hormones, and it makes you a fight or flight response. And then the important thing here really is that it hijacks the prefrontal cortex, and then you become like a kind of monkey. You don't think in the same way when your amygdala activates, right? Imagine you are in your place, you open the door and you find a lion. For your prefrontal cortex, if you were based on your prefrontal cortex, your response, your prefrontal cortex would look at the lion. I would say, okay, let's take a look at the lion. Is it big enough? Do you think it's gonna attack me? So, and then the prefrontal cortex could take a long time. So what happened here is the amygdala disconnect all these perspective and analytical reasoning areas, and that just take a very straight answer to that and produce a lot of fear and stress, but make you make your body take a quick decision. The important thing here is that there are a couple of things in the company which activate the amygdala. And remember, when the amygdala activates, you don't think in the same way. So, for example, if there is a change in status or prestige in the company, it's very, very severe. The amygdala just floods your brain with a lot of hormones, and then you become a monkey, right? Imagine you go to some people that they have been being, a manager. They were a manager for a long time, and you tell them you are going to be a servant leader. Nobody like to be a servant. So be careful with that word because it can produce an activation of the amygdala. Now, people coming from COVID or working at home for a long time with a lot of uncertainty have a higher activation of the amygdala too, because of fear, because of conscious or subconscious, issues that can happen. If things change quickly or if there is excessive change on workload, or high uncertainty, the amygdala is activated and is flooding the brain for a long time. So when you have a higher activation of the amygdala for a few days, people are less flexible to change. So maybe you should take your expectations a little bit lower when people are coming from COVID now, right? And then we see an increase in conflict also. So the amygdala basically hijacks or disables the higher brain centers and then shut down the perspective and analytical reasoning and produce this stress response, and people are not very flexible, okay? And let me give you a quick example. So imagine you have these guys. You have Fibo is a developer and Anna is their manager, and then they get along very well. And then, they always talk about everything. Post-COVID, right? This guy said, Anna, I have an idea that I wanted to share with you. And Anna said, well, Fibo always has great ideas. I'm sure I'm gonna say yes, right? And then see what he said. What if we flatten out the structure, the hierarchies of the company to be more agile? Let me show you what happened in the brain. You're not going to believe that. So flattening hierarchies means that you're probably going to lose prestige. Yes. So then it activates the amygdala in a way that you can't imagine how it floods with a lot of hormones. Your amygdala, you become a monkey. And it's a status drop. When people feel there is a status drop, then amygdala is activated. So then what happened here is that first of all, the amygdala kidnapped the thinking brain at 110 milliseconds before this lady knows that has been hijacked, and that was discovered by in Madrid in 2016 by Antonio Gil, which is a scientific researcher of the brain. And then start adding some starting adding some thoughts, as for example, hey Anna, if you are not a manager anymore and you're a flat instructor, maybe you're gonna lose your job, maybe you're not gonna be here for long, maybe you're not gonna be able to pay your kids' school. And then in 220 milliseconds, the thinking brain gets new scenario without Anna knowing that has been strongly influenced, right? And this is what happened in many companies, that you see very irrational behaviors and you don't know why. And now that people are coming from COVID, we need to reinforce and give a lot of clarity about what is happening, because people come back from to the offices with higher activation of the amygdala. And this is the last part of the presentation today, which I'm going to show you the pyramid of the change journey, which is one of the techniques you can use to try to diminish activation of the amygdala, try to make sure people embrace change. And you can use, I created that, so you can use this everywhere, not just IT teams, but everyone in the company, to try to accelerate change in the organization, right? Fadi, do we have any question or anything you wanted to mention?
We're good at this point, so.
Okay, I'm going to be with you 5 more minutes, guy, explaining this. So the pyramid of the change journey that I created a long time ago start with a person saying, I want things to be as I say, I don't care about you, right? Sometimes when we're talking about change, we imagine that people do not want to embrace change. What the pyramid of change says is that you have 5 different types of mindset. There is no good or bad mindset. There are 5 different types of mindset. And then the first one, when we are in the first mindset, is a person who believes that their ideas are great and do not want to change. And does not care about the person trying to propose the change. In fact, when you're at this level, the person proposing the change and the change for the person that has to change is the same thing, right? And in this, at this level, there are a lot of fear, subconscious fear about losing prestige or losing the job or similar many subconscious fears, right? What we do at this point, guys, even if you teach here a framework like Scrum or something else, it's not going to work very well. People are not going to embrace the change, right? So at this point, what you have to do is you have to work with these people. You have to read between lines and try to see what are the fears. Sometimes people do not know. Sometimes it can be fears of anything, but it's very subconscious. You need to talk a lot. Sometimes it are conscious fears, right? And then you need to start working with these people. For example, if you are changing a role in the company, and then you are not including the people affected by these changes, then you might be able to find this. So we use a lot of neuroscience of change techniques, where we try to make sure that we help this person to go into the right journey. But at this point, teaching, showing PowerPoints, teaching a new framework, or teaching something else, or teaching even new skills, maybe it's not going to work, right? Then people move to the second level, which is I don't like the proposed change. When this person said I do not like the proposed change, it's because the person already know that is not going to lose the job. They don't have fears, and they started moving in the different direction. But this person believes that their idea is better. And what happened here is, what we can see when I don't like the proposed change many times is because this person do not have the skills to understand this change. But also, when people do not like the proposed change, is because they have other interests. For example, it happened to me in a company that people do not like some change, and they didn't like it, and nobody knew why until I discovered that people did not like that change, because if we change, we would discard a tool, a software tool, and people coded that software tool a few years before, and they were very proud of what they did, was their baby, right? So I don't like the proposed change. It implies also emotional part, not that much fear, but emotional part, what we call also ownership, right? Sometimes there are software ownership or hidden agendas. And then in order to move to the next level, we need to try to understand what is happening that people do not listen to people, and try to see why they do not like the proposed change, right? And from here, we move to the third mindset. This is the healthy people generally go in this way, which is I do not understand why they change. And this is very interesting, because in here there is a turning point. The person really start thinking that maybe that change is good or not, but start confronting their ideas with the other ideas, which is the beginning of changing, right? So, for example, I do not like, for example, doing sport in the morning, right? I don't understand why people do not do sport in the morning. I'm very sleepy in the morning. I'm not a morning person. I don't understand why. But maybe if I have the right motivation and I had the right things on board, I could be able to understand why, right? So here is people that have their ideas. They are very proud, obviously, but they are start being open about these new ideas. And in here is where you have, you can, for example, train new skills to the person, train Scrum or train any framework, add new skills. Maybe person does not have the skills. And this is where you support the person with knowledge, where you support this person, discussions, open discussions, where you can listen to this person, etc. It's completely different than the other levels. And the fourth level is I do not understand why we must change. And this is very interesting. The person is convinced that he had to change, but this person really needs the people around them, their team to change. If this person see the teams is also changing, then they are going to change. And in here, we need to make sure that, for example, if we're going to change, the team is going to have the conditions, and this is moving from the individual to the social part, from the team, the team, right? And here, for example, a team needs to have the right working agreement. They do not know a dysfunctional team is not going to change, so we need to make this team functional, and we need to make sure the whole team is on board to move. And then what happens when people are in this mindset is very easy to move to the last mindset, that is, we want to change, right? But we take this as 5 different mindsets, and we have different techniques for any of these different areas. What I suggest is that you should draw this pyramid, and you note down which techniques you know for each of these mindsets. And then if for any of these areas, generally the lower we go, the less knowledge people sometimes have, then you try to start thinking what you need to learn as a consultant in order to improve that area, right? Does it make sense? Yes. And then there is a chapter, an episode of the PIL, organizational PIL, that I talk about this, and I explain a little bit more, right? And this is basically the techniques I wanted to talk to you guys today. I hope I gave you different perspectives of what enterprise agility is and a few tools. Obviously, we could talk here for long hours. Then I wanted to know if you have questions, then that's maybe the right time now to answer them. Excellent. You have here the link for the organizational pillar, and also my blog if you want to read some articles, right?
Thanks a lot, Eric. We had one question about what you covered earlier regarding the rapid response room, and if you have any recommendations on a distributed virtual team rapid response room? And any recommendation, any ways of setting it up for a virtual and distributed team?
Well, I'm very keen on using tools like Sococo, for example, right? So in one of the companies, we put cameras in the room and we connected this to the virtual environment. So everyone could click on that room. But also, if you can see the distribution of the rooms and use a tool like Sococo, or there are other tools, they can also, people can see how people are moving. If three of your colleagues are inside that room and you can see it, then you're gonna go there, right? So I generally recommend a mix between virtual and physical. So for example, putting cameras, not allowing chairs, and then putting monitors with information around. You can put Kanbans, you can put some camera pointing to the Kanban, or using flat screens, touch screens, where you can also reproduce that. But basically what I suggest is first that having certain working agreement, very, very basic. And then what is happening if something changes? What do we expect? So imagine someone goes inside or virtually goes inside, what it has to happen? What's the outcome of that? Right? Why we are there and what is happening if there was some change in the market? So what is expected? What are the expectations? The expectation for me, for example, for me, a consultant, right? I'm not in a company, is that if something changes, maybe we would need or either to cancel a sprint or either call out the product owners and they need to reprioritize their backlogs, or either something has to happen. And then also it's very important that they know what the value stream is. So all the people that needed in order to produce a product, so to create a product. So all the value stream has to be informed. For example, it's not very useful if a product changes and then you call the IT team and then you don't call the marketing person and you don't call someone else. First, because it's going to be very dysfunctional. These people are going to be very upset. And second, because you're not going to make the right decisions, right? But it has to be working agreement. But try to think in terms of what happens if anything changes, what's the value of this room, and people have to have very clear how to act in terms of what it should happen, right? I don't know if I answered the question.
Any other questions for Erich? Drew, go ahead. If you can unmute, it'll be easier. We're at the end now.
Yes, can you hear me?
Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, so I wasn't quite sure how to express my question, but when people have these fear responses that create this resistance to change, it seems like what are some techniques to kind of help address that? So for instance, is it making people aware so they can respond differently? They can become aware of what they're fearing that's limiting their agility, or is it making sure that incentives and punishments are aligned so it doesn't trigger people's fear responses? So what are just some different techniques of, because I think that underlying fear response has a big impact on the ability for an organization to change. So how do you manage that fear?
Well, this is an interesting question. One of the things that is very important is to understand the history of that person or team. Many consultants, sometimes they jump into a company and they don't know what happened before. And in many occasions, we need to just dig a little bit and see what happened in the past with that team, with that person. Did anything happen? Then we need to be aware of the fears. Now, unfortunately, sometimes as a consultant, they don't trust you. They do not trust you because you haven't been there for a long time. Unless you are a full-time employee, they do not trust you. So maybe what you can do first is identify a person in the team that everyone trusts. It doesn't need to be the leader. It's someone they trust. Have a conversation with that person, and it's going to be easier for that person to find out what the fears are what the problems are. And then what you can do is you have a conversation, and maybe as a consultant, you are not gonna be the person trying to address that. For example, in a company I was trying to help, there was a team where two people in the team, they have fears of change and many more things. And then we saw that it was related to a certain issue that was in the past, and we knew how to solve it. But instead of we solving it, we asked this leader that was not the formal leader, but was a leader in the team, to give us some ideas. So he talked to these people and came up with some ideas. Then they implemented it, and then it started working. So I would say, first of all, we need to understand if we are able to influence that change, to remove those fears. Maybe we are not, maybe we are. The second thing is try to understand that if we are making that change that is going to impact some people, are we including those people into, for example, if we're changing a role, are we including those people into this, the definition of the new role, or we are not doing that? The third thing, as I said, is the history of this team, right? And then also you have to be aware of your limitations. What I suggest many times is that you do not work on your own, because everyone has certain limitations. Maybe for you it's difficult for certain things to try to understand what the fears of that person or that team, but maybe for some existing person it's going to be easier. So try to build a network that can help, but everyone has to be aware that people can be afraid of things that maybe they do not realize, right? And it's very important also to check what's the level of psychological health in the organization, how open people feel and how safe they feel in the organization. If they do not feel very safe or safe, the chances that you're going to be able to make these people embrace change is not going to be that high. At least I give you an idea, right? I could talk for hours about that, but I guess you have some ideas.
Yes, thank you very much.
Excellent.
And also know about neuroscience of change is also a very good idea how the brain works. I think that might help. And I published an article, and then there's a company called InfoQ that is also republishing my article, but in a bigger version of how to deal with toxic people and psychopaths during agile change. They're gonna publish it in November. I have a short version, but they're gonna publish the long version beginning of November. Sometimes we come across narcissist people, very toxic people, and we don't know how to deal with them. So that's gonna be published soon.
Cool. Sharon, you want to ask your question?
Sure. Hi. I was curious in terms of what you mentioned about placing cameras in support of Sococo. How has that worked in relation to the fear response?
With cameras?
Yes.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah, have you found that people feel like it's a bit of a privacy concern for them, where previously there may not have been cameras in the rooms?
Okay, so what you can do is in certain companies, you don't have to put cameras everywhere. You can put cameras in certain rooms, for example. Right? You can call them collaboration rooms, and you can put cameras in certain rooms. And then if people do not feel comfortable with having cameras, you can start in that way and see how it works. And then from there, you can see. You don't have to do everything at the same time. All right. Also, there are other techniques that you can use, but people have to be physically in the room. For example, I was giving some ideas some long time ago to the Boston consultancy group, and then they ended up doing at some point, I don't know if because I influenced that or not, then they put some devices to people to see how people walk in the company, and they change the physical environment. So people bump into each other, not physically, right? They didn't bump physically each other, but they try to make sure they increase the probability for people to cross in the offices, and that increases the flow of information. So there are other techniques you can also use, but to make sure that information flows better in the company. The better information flows in the company, the more innovation you're going to have in the organization. But going back to the original question, I would say just start with a few rooms and see how it works. Maybe people love it, maybe people, and try to make sure that they also take ownership of that. Maybe, you don't do it, you ask some team to develop the idea and to set some rooms and do by themselves, so they can take ownership of that. But doesn't mean that in this company, for example, we rented a building and then we ran a massive experiment there. That doesn't mean that could work somewhere else. Maybe in another place you can just do a few rooms.
All right, awesome. Any other questions? We have time for one more, and we will wrap it up. Okay.
Also, if you one important thing is that if you think that people are not going to feel comfortable with privacy, something that obviously you can see is why it's happening, right? Maybe the reason why it's happening is not what we believe it is. Some companies may think that it's a way of checking if people are doing the job right, and this is not the idea. Sorry, Fadi, you had another question, or?
We are done. So I want to thank you first for joining us and giving us this talk. I want to thank everybody else that joined in, and we want to do a quick book giveaway. So Erich, I'm going to ask you to pick a number from 1 to 14.
12.
12.
And remember, if you have Audible, maybe you could be able to get the book there if you have credits.
Courtney Bristow, are you still with us?
Otherwise, we choose another number.
Bridget Jones, are you still with us? All right. Meenakshi Punjabi.
I'm here.
You are here. Awesome.
Thank you. I was hoping to get
there you go. So just shoot me your email in the chat, send it directly to me, and we'll hook you up with a digital book or an audiobook.
Thank you. Sorry, I can't turn on my video today. I'm not at my...
No worries. No worries. All right, folks. Our next meeting is...
sorry, I am here. I unfortunately just had the phone on mute.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Don't worry. I gave you one of you an audiobook, so the two of you get something.
Oh, very cool. Thank you so much.
Okay. So just drop me an email, and then I give you an audiobook. So then both of you get something to read in the coming days.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that.
All right. So our next event is going to be November, let's see, 16. It's going to be a working session, not necessarily a presentation. It's going to be more of a discussion and a workshop. We'll post that out shortly on Meetup. So expect the invite out over the next few days. Erich, thanks a lot for joining us so early for you. Really appreciate it.
We're almost
glad
6
you were
in the
able
morning.
to make it. Glad you were able to make it, as always. All right, folks, if anybody wants to stick around and network, I'll leave the line open for a bit. Otherwise, we will see you next time.